MAUGA's coming soon to Ranked, and it's best to be prepared for him. This isn't some beginner's guide where I'm going to tell you obvious things like MAUGA's Overrun allows you to engage or escape engages. I want to talk about his strengths, weaknesses, and how to take advantage of both. If you're looking for more in-depth content like this, make sure to use the link in the description to get access to a GameLeap membership. There are tons of guides with full coverage for all your favorite heroes, and even courses that can help you with overall game knowledge. Check it out, and let's get right into the reasons why MAUGA even is good enough to practice in the first place. Knowing what a hero does well is key to actually playing them well. The first and foremost objective is always going to be to deal range damage. MAUGA doesn't shield his team forward like Reinhardt, nor does he set up a dive like Winston. His fall-off range and raw DPS output are both super high level, and not just for a tank. For a tank, he's insane, so you'll always want to be melting whoever is peeking as much as you can with your chain gun combo, lighting them up for the crits. And although MAUGA's great at melting other tanks, you should focus on trying to be more precise, going for picks on squishies instead. You can do so much with just your primary and secondary fire. That's basically what MAUGA's neutral is, trying to get picks with your chain gun execution or bursting down the enemy tank at close range. And of course, when you're fighting against the tank or even any hero with a larger hitbox than Ana, you'll want to be doubling up on those chain guns every time to deal all that accumulative damage. It adds up to 270 damage per second, and it's a lot to take in. You definitely cannot be playing MAUGA without regularly getting into melee range. His close range damage is just too good to not be used in your kit. So now that we're playing for MAUGA's insane damage at seemingly any range, let's move on to another crucial part of his kit, Cardiac Overdrive. But even though it's a really critical ability, you're not going to be spamming it all the time. Cardiac Overdrive gives you and your team 70% lifesteal and 30% damage reduction. It's crazy powerful, but you do not want to be starting the fight by just running in, trying to force an advantage. It's best to use mid-fight or even very late fight. It's the ultimate second wind, and it's best for capitalizing instead of engaging. Echo's Focusing Beam is a more accurate example. You're never going to be starting a duel with a laser that specifically does multiply damage below half health. You have to soften them up first before you commit. Cardiac Overdrive is amazing, but it also leaves you in a compromising spot when you don't have it. It's also best used when you can guarantee that you'll deal a lot of damage. Early in the fight when everyone's got their defensive abilities is going to be the hardest time to deal the most effective damage. Using it at the right moment is more important than using it as often as you can to be more active. So there's our first two strengths. Firstly, ranged pick potential and high tank damage, and then secondly, a team tempo buff. It's pretty straightforward. And now thirdly, the piece to bring it all together, Overrun. MAUGA's charge is really flexible, but one of the best uses for it is just for repositioning. It can be used to run in and look to slam directly on someone for the stun, but it's just not very reliable. It's 100% good for escaping pressure, but you can't go the whole game just running backwards. So with only 6 seconds on the cooldown, you can really go crazy running all over the map, taking the best positions to deal the most damage. Even if you do want to go for an aggressive engage in close range, you don't have to immediately run in from the start, but you can run to a better position that's closer and has more cover, and then you can engage afterwards. Because the first thing we're playing for is our range damage, we need to play on a sightline that allows us to do that damage, and that shouldn't always be main. You won't always need your Overrun to rotate between angles. The important thing to remember is just that you need to switch your position often. So we have high damage, a high impact tempo ability, and an unstoppable short cooldown mobility. That sums up MAUGA's kit in a simple way, and it also makes it a lot easier to understand how to play him. MAUGA isn't just a spamming tank, a brawling tank, or a rushing tank, but he's a flexible combination of all three. Sorry for everyone who was hoping he could be used in dive, but he didn't quite make the cut. Here's the rundown. His chain guns and ammo allow him to both spam and look for picks, so 1. Look to deal effective damage all the time. Next, his Cardiac Overdrive allows him to push hard with his team, so 2. Look for opportunities to go aggressive in the mid-fight. And finally, his mobility allows him to switch angles on the fly, so 3. Look to always push to an optimal position or angle to deal more effective damage. These 3 points are really good for shaping your gameplay around, but you'll still need more to get a better head start to becoming a good MAUGA player. MAUGA doesn't just have strengths, he's also got weaknesses, so let's go over the most important ones and how to deal with them. Overall, MAUGA is a pretty decent hero. All of MAUGA's abilities that I just mentioned have really good coverage for the weaker parts of his kit, starting with his massive hitbox. It's probably the first thing a lot of people noticed when he first got revealed. He is huge. But being a big target is just the price you have to pay for the rest of his powerful kit, and luckily you can actually play to avoid taking so much damage solely by being the size of 3 refrigerators. And that's just playing for your normal, long-range damage output. Every tank gets focused when they take space, and MAUGA is no exception, but you don't need to be fully peeking to apply enough pressure to get your team moving forward. You should already be using cover on other tanks anyway, so this isn't really a new concept, but it is especially important for MAUGA since he can only reduce damage on himself and allies. And that's his next weakness. Like Roadhog and Doomfist, MAUGA has no way to shield or eat abilities like Biotic Nade or Dynamite. This even extends to ultimates like Captive Sun and Deadeye. Not being able to block these abilities makes him way more powerful against you and, more importantly, your team. MAUGA has Overrun for himself to escape, but his team doesn't. There's nothing you can do to prevent your team from getting hit by ultimates or abilities. But obviously, you can't affect how your team plays. The only thing you can do is just run. Start preparing to kite back whenever you see heroes push forward to use their abilities. You can even be aggressive to bait those abilities and then fall back with your Overrun. MAUGA and Hog are both big tanks that feed a lot when they peek, but Overrun makes a massive difference. Make sure to use it often to avoid getting punished. Falling back out of the fight isn't as bad for MAUGA as it is for other tanks. Long-range tracking can still get you picks and will still apply pressure. Finally, let's go over the most optimal ways to use MAUGA's abilities and damage, and even some tricks and techniques to decrease your downtime and be more effective. Starting with the chain guns, you probably already know that you're supposed to set your target on fire with Gunny and then finish them off with Chow Chow for the crits. Yeah, those are the actual names for the guns. But there are some really good stats to know to be more effective with your main weapon. The way the incendiary gun works is that after you hit 10 shots on your target, they become ignited for 3 seconds. That's the amount of time you have to deal crits before the burn runs out. So firstly, practice timing your gun switching so you can get the most out of those 3 seconds to deal maximum critical damage. The faster you can swap to the crit gun after igniting, the faster you'll get the kill. You can still reignite your target whenever by just hitting 10 more consecutive shots on your target, but that's only if you can't kill them within those 3 seconds of full crits, and right there is the way to go. Against DPS and supports, ignite and switch as soon as you hit those 10 shots, or at least as soon as you can, to one-shot them as fast as possible. Against tanks, unless they're almost dead, you can ignite them again before it runs out to avoid shooting with your crit gun while it's not doing crits. The 2 guns do the exact same damage outside of the bonus burn on the incendiary chain gun, so you'll always want to be using your incendiary when they're not burning and vice versa, your critical gun when they are. But against those squishies that can quickly leave your line of sight, you need to get faster. Just getting more effective at gun swapping will drastically increase your pick potential. Hitting 10 shots can take as little as 0.55 seconds, basically just half a second. The exact time it takes depends on how many shots you're hitting, but 0.5 to 1 second is your ballpark for how fast you can switch. When you start hitting shots for that long, you can easily prepare to react to the ignition and start drilling that juicy 180 DPS from downrange. Using both guns is also important. Just keep in mind that you're slowed down by 30% when using the 2 guns at the same time. That slow adds on pretty massively when you're trying to chase a kill at close range. Soon enough, you'll be too slow to stay in close range. Alternate between the guns not just for the chain gun combo, but also to lower the slowing effect on yourself. It's just like how D.Va isn't always shooting despite having infinite ammo, because it slows you down. Except MAUGA has the advantage of not needing to stop shooting completely. Next up is how to optimize your overrun. There's a lot of utility in that one ability, but most of the time you'll be using it just for the movement, and you don't need your slam for that. There are 2 ways to cancel your charge, and it depends on how far you want to go and how fast you want to enter combat. After starting your charge, you can always cancel it with the same button, but using your primary fire or even your jump will activate the stomp, forcing you into the slamming animation. This animation takes a while and also locks your movement, but you can totally avoid it if you're not looking to hit that slam damage or even the boop. So firstly, when you're running the full distance of your charge, like during a long rotation or even just out of spawn, right as MAUGA jumps at the end of overrun, cancel it and then hold your jump key. You'll exit the form faster and get back to your gun sooner, but you also get momentum from the start of the stomp at the end of your charge, and from the bunny hop you get by holding the jump key down. It does retain your speed, but you can only use the bunny hop when the charge naturally ends. You can't cancel the stomp once you manually start it, but you can cancel it while it's automatically starting at the end of the charge. And of course, you can cancel the charge at any time, and you should. It's sometimes better to just cancel your run into your damage instead of going for the slam stun when you're going for a close range pick. Cardiac Overdrive is next, and I mostly want to reiterate what I said earlier. You have to use it when you can actually confirm a lot of damage. 70% lifesteal is great no matter what, but for yourself, if you're just dealing 90 DPS with one of your guns, it's not enough healing to keep yourself up against the massive hitbox. But if we're talking 270 DPS, suddenly we're healing for 190 healing per second, on top of an extra 90 over health per second thanks to the crits. So that all sounds amazing, but when you're actually playing the game, you're not going to be dealing 270 DPS all the time. Most likely, you'll only be dealing it for 1 second before all the panic buttons start getting pressed, like Sigma's Kinetic Grasp or Kiriko's Protective Suzu. But that's all good, especially as a tank, you don't need to feel forced to get kills right off the bat to be effective, but trading your aggressive cooldown for a defensive one isn't great, especially in this case. It's such a high impact ability that it's wasted on just forcing cooldowns. That's what you have your damage output for anyway. And finally, the ultimate. There's only 2 things to keep in mind when you're ulting. Firstly, you always want to have your cardiac overdrive available. Without it, you're just way more likely to die, and with your targets locked close to you, it's the perfect situation to make yourself fully invincible for at least the 5-second duration of the overdrive. Secondly, respect the counters. Symmetra and Lifeweaver can both save allies from the cage fight, and MAUGA and Orisa can time their cooldowns to escape it. The ult also has a cast time to it, so be careful not to let it get stunned either. Don't overthink the ultimate too much, just pick someone that you can focus that can't really be saved. And remember that if whoever you trap gets Nano Boost or Transcendence or any other saving ability, you can always just cancel your ultimate and run away to avoid dying. That's it for the advanced guide for MAUGA. If you have any questions or even criticism, put it in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.